You ever felt an attraction to someone that was just so intense it didn't make any logical sense? I mean, a pull that felt almost magnetic? Well, what if that feeling wasn't just a crush? What if it was something else entirely? Today, we are diving deep into a really unique and pretty complex theory from a text called The Resonance Trap and the Sovereign Audit. And it offers a very different explanation for that kind of powerful connection. So, right off the bat, this gets us to the absolute core question of the source material. Is that overwhelming, all-consuming feeling actually love? Or is it what this text calls a biological ping? Now, that's a pretty wild idea, right? It asks us to completely rethink a feeling that is so familiar to all of us. All right, first things first, we've got to deconstruct this whole idea. We really need to get a handle on how the source separates a totally normal crush from this so-called ping. Understanding this difference is key to, well, grasping the rest of this theory. Okay, so look at this comparison. On one side, you've got your standard crush. It's built on real connection, shared jokes, genuine emotion. We get that. But on the other side, the source proposes this biological ping. It describes it as a manufactured frequency, like a radio signal, that's specifically designed to target your unique personal resonance, which it poetically calls your sharp B-flat. The whole point here is that this feeling, according to the text, is engineered. It's not organic. So, if this feeling is manufactured, how? How would that even work? This next part of the explainer is going to break down the alleged mechanics of what the source calls the resonance trap. And this is where the details get really specific. So the theory introduces a few key players. First up, we have the draconic priestess. Now, the source says this isn't a literal title, but a role. It's a person who's basically being used as a kind of broadcast tower, a 2D projection. Their job? To radiate that specific counterfeit frequency we just talked about, all to ensnare one particular target. And here's the next piece of this bizarre puzzle, something called the confirmation engine. The text claims this is a system that literally takes the target's private, internal thoughts and, well, feeds them back to them through the priestess. Just imagine hearing your deepest, most random inner monologue spoken by someone else. You can see how that would create this incredibly powerful, almost addictive sense of intimacy, a feeling that you've been truly seen. But again, the claim is that it's all manufactured. So where is all this supposed to be happening? The source calls the environment the archonic overlay. You can think of it as the whole system, the reality, or maybe, like this slide suggests, a kind of giant piece of flypaper where the target gets pinned by this trap. Its entire purpose is to keep them stuck, looping in this state of attraction and compliance, unable to break free. And this quote from the text really sums it all up. The attraction feels so real because it's tapping into something you're genuinely looking for, what the source calls the blue frequency. But the theory is that your genuine search has been hijacked. The feeling is real, but its source is a fake, a counterfeit. Which of course brings us to the big question, why? I mean, if a system this complicated actually exists, what's the ultimate goal? Let's take a look at what the source claims is the so-called archonic endgame. The text lays out a very specific strategy that it calls the limbic squeeze. It's basically a 4-step process. Step 1, cause a painful identity crisis, a shedding of your old self. Step 2, create deep, profound emotional exhaustion from all that turmoil. Step 3, make any kind of independent move, any leap of faith, seem absolutely terrifying. And then finally, step 4, offer up that familiar projection, the priestess, as the one and only safe place to land. The ultimate goal here? To get the target to surrender simply out of sheer exhaustion. But why go through all that trouble? I mean, what's the point? Well, according to the source, this is where the theory takes a really sharp turn. All of this incredibly elaborate psychological machinery, the pings, the traps, the priestesses, it's all allegedly for one very simple reason: to create a powerful distraction. A distraction meant to keep you from looking at some very specific, very real-world evidence. And the source doesn't mess around here. It gets surprisingly specific about this so-called evidence. It actually lists things like a legal code violation, a $20 million grant, something called the RICO evidence ledger, a specific case number, and even a digital wallet. The whole argument is that this entire massive resonance trap is just an elaborate smokescreen designed to keep these details hidden. Okay, so if that's the trap, how do you get out of it? The final section of the text proposes a way out, a path to seeing the truth, which it calls your sovereign audit. Now, this is a really interesting way of looking at it. The source argues that that feeling of deep confusion, that what is even going on right now feeling, that's not a weakness. On the contrary, that's your own internal sovereign auditor at work. It's your gut, your intuition, screaming that something is deeply, deeply wrong here. It's a sign that you're already detecting the deception. And this final quote really brings the whole theory full circle. It claims that the powerful attraction you feel isn't for the person, the proxy. It's for the truth they're allegedly hiding. The attraction is just a decoy. And according to the source, all the spiritual framing is just a mask to hide the real wizards who are pulling the strings behind the curtain. And that leaves us with this final, really thought-provoking question. At what point does a complex web of seemingly connected data points stop being just a wild theory and start looking more like a map? What really is the difference between a conspiracy and a map? And that, well, that's a question for you to think about.